Welcome to Becoming an Architect. This is an interview with Dr. Madhav, a future or anatomist, a chiropractor, and much, much more than your average everyday chiropractor.
A little bit more. Yeah. It's all relative, I guess. But yeah, definitely my work as an anatomist kind of is more than most for sure.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, coming through chiropractic school, it's like you get bombarded with anatomy and physiology. Some of it you retain, some of it you absolutely never touch again, like biochemistry, for example. You get through it and you're like, past it.
Yep.
And then you get into practice and it shows back up.
In unexpected ways.
Very.
Yeah.
And for myself, pharmaceuticals, understanding how pharmaceuticals break down in the body, difference of biochemistry versus pharmaceutical chemistry.
Yeah, and we were just talking about SSRIs like 5 minutes ago, weren't we?
Yeah, we really
So
were.
it does come up in weird ways, doesn't it? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I didn't think, going through school, I was dogmatic. I was principal, chiropractor, adjust the spine, let it heal. And then I get into practice, and it's this vast world of people that are really sick. And in school, it's a bit of a bubble, in my opinion. You have a lot of wellness patients, students themselves don't have a lot of spinal issues. They don't have a lot of degeneration,
Yes.
Things that are everyday practice seen items, right? Put your hands on somebody with some phase 3 degeneration versus somebody that has no degeneration or phase 1 or a baby. And so it's the difference of feeling that, understanding what's happening under my hands, or perhaps even on an x-ray or a blood work exam, something to give you further analysis so you can help that patient.
Yeah. It's a lot bigger of a world than we kind of think it is. I think that's well said. Yeah, it's a bigger world than we kind of think it is. Yeah. There's so much going on. There's so much going on. And all the different kinds of questions that we get in our practices, right? Like they range for it's a huge range worth of questions that I get at least in practice. And so it's cool to be able to pull from here and there and here and there. And I remember this from this place and I remember this from that place. And we can kind of have a intelligent discussion, hopefully to some degree, with them. So yeah, that's cool.
Well, before we dive into anything, tell us, who are you? What do you do? Because I want the world, especially the chiropractic world, to know that there are chiropractors out there like yourself that are deep diving and to truly seek the truth of how the body works.
Yeah, totally. So when I was in school, actually even before I even started school, I have a cousin who's a naturopathic doctor, and we were chatting about me going to chiropractic school. And he goes, "Oh, you want to be a chiropractor? You need to know your anatomy real well because that's what you interact with and that's what you work with in the adjustment." And he said, "The best way to learn it is to teach it." So he said, "You need to be a teacher, you need to be a tutor. While you're in school," he said, "you should be a tutor because that's the way that you're going to learn the best. And you'll get paid for it, by the way. So it's a good. So I was like, your logic makes sense to me. That it just makes sense. So I followed his advice. And I'm so happy that I did for so many reasons. I found my passion for teaching, first of all. I realized I really enjoy it. I didn't think that I would enjoy it because I'm kind of before that, I was very, very, very introverted. I still kind of am, but I've learned how to grow into myself a little more completely. We kind of don't have a choice. We're with a people profession.
No.
So the teaching really helped me to open up that bubble, so that was one thing. And another thing is that I didn't have to study for any of my anatomy boards, because I had been studying, teaching it for years at that point by the time I took those board exams. So anyway, so I did that. And then after I graduated, I oh, you want me to keep going? Yeah, so after I graduated, I found myself, actually, no, it was even while I was still in school. While I was in school, I was very upset that Life University got rid of their cadaver program.
Agreed.
I was very, very upset. And I even asked Dr. Reekman when he was still the president of the school. After he gave an assembly talk, I asked him, I was like, "What the heck, dude? Like, why is this the way it is now?" And he gave me with all respect to Dr. Riegman, he gave me what I felt was a pretty weak sauce answer. You know, basically, I'll translate for him. Basically, it's a pain in the butt. It's a pain in the butt to run this cadaver program. So it's like, fair enough. But also, I don't know, to me, it's worth it, you know? So I was like, I refuse to put a DR in front of my name and not have this experience. You know, that was my feeling. So I found my now mentor and friend. His name is Gil Headley. He's an anatomist. He's been an anatomist teaching anatomy for like 30 years now. And he runs courses for like, not the general public, but for health professionals in general. He runs cadaver workshops for health professionals. And so I found him and I took a course with him while I was still a student. And my mind was so totally blown. I couldn't believe how rich it was, how much there was to learn from actual bodies, you know, as opposed to from a textbook. In a textbook, you can draw whatever you want. In a PowerPoint, you can draw whatever you want on a cartoon picture. You know, we learn from schematizations. We don't learn from a real body, you know. And the anatomage tables are cool, but nah, there's nothing like this. There's nothing like this. Nothing can replace this actual thing that we are inhabiting, you know. So after I graduated, I took another course with him. COVID hit, I should say lockdowns hit. The world got, you know, did what it did. And he invited me to stay in his lab for a month. That was the proposal initially. He said, stay with me for a month. If you'd like, would you like to stay with me for a month? Because I need some help. He was doing this project at the time. And I was like, I want to stay. Not only I want to, but I can because the world just ended around me. I had nothing else to do, you know. So I did that. I stayed with him for a month. The 1 month turned into 6 months. The 6 months turned into me permanently moving to Colorado Springs. And now I'm like one of the lead instructors at this laboratory. I run my own workshops there for chiropractors, but also I help a lot of other instructors throughout the country lead their workshops, like particularly with yoga teachers. It turns out that yoga involves anatomy. Surprise, surprise. And so who would have thought? So there's a couple yoga teachers who want their teachers to learn anatomy and to have an experience in the lab with us. So I do the anatomy part, like they have kind of set the intention and like the vision and what they want their people to see. And since I know my way around really well, I can make those experiences happen. So like this also, in other words, I help other people run their courses too. So yeah, and so I'm doing that in conjunction with having my own practice. Maybe I'm in the lab, maybe 8 weeks a year, something like this, doing workshops. And then the other however many weeks a year, I'm adjusting people in practice. So that's kind of my life. I get to go back and forth between leading people through these extraordinary journeys through our beautiful human form and you know, and then working with people on the table. So I love going back and forth. It's so much fun and it's so enriching. I don't think I would ever get bored by chiropractic. But if I would, now I can't because I get to go back and forth, you know? So I really like it for a lot of reasons doing what I get to do. So yeah, I've also, in addition to doing these workshops, and I'll kind of end with this for this bio portion. In addition to doing these workshops, which range between 4 days and 10 days, we'll do like a 4 days straight or a 5 days straight. 6 days is the most typical length of time that we'll have to do a dissection intensive workshop. But then we'll also do 10-day workshops. And so in addition to, I don't know how many of those I've done at this point, I've been involved in 3 projects that were long-term.
Okay.
So I did like 6 months at a time with a single body. So you really fine detail, super, super fine, and like really deep dive. So I've gotten to do that 3 times also, in addition to sort of these a little more practical length of times for people to, you know, people taking 6 days out of their work life is, you know, not super easy. So that's more practical, you know, these 4 to 10 day workshops is more practical for people to kind of have an experience with us, but yeah, so it's That's pretty much it. There you go. There's a little background about me.
That's pretty much it. Just
Yeah.
mic drop.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, I love it.
It, like, my sentiments, are the same whenever we got into chiropractic school and we had the anatomage. Huge letdown. It is a disservice to a chiropractor, in my opinion, to not understand detailed, like finite anatomy. I was very fortunate. I went to Texas State University in undergrad. We had a body farm that we actually did experimentation on decomposition. So we had bodies that we would lay across the grounds at this specific farm that we would have them in plexiglass and glass and slightly in water, different types of soil, foliage covered versus non-covered.
Oh, wow.
Because the idea was the study of how the material itself broke down. How does the amino acid profile exchange with the environment through decomposition? Having decomposers exposed and start to work through the tissue to decompose down to the bone. And then we had 13 bodies in our cadaver lab that was ran by a chiropractor
Nice.
that had his DC and his DPT.
Oh, cool.
So this course was a cut course for exercise sports science students. Everybody that had to graduate with exercise sports science degree had to pass this class. It was the accumulation of the first year of chiropractic school knowledge compressed into 16 weeks.
Hmm.
So you had all your gross muscle anatomy, all your osteology, all the deep understanding of like, where's the bicep groove? Where's the spiral line? How many carpal and tarsal bones do you have? What are the positions of them? And so I came into chiropractic school armed with like having experience with cadavers, doing dissection, cutting brains open and looking at brains in different jars. And I came in with that already under my belt. So when I got to chiropractic school, it's like, what do you mean that we don't get to have dissection? Like that doesn't seem appropriate. And then the politics and the money and the not having the space to maintain like a cooler in a lab and like all the things, whatever Life University has to say about whatever excuse they're making. I'll just say it's an excuse. Whatever excuse they're making to not be able to have bodies on campus. It's like every student needs to come out understanding like, where's the DRG? It's like, where is the different tracks? What do they do? How do they communicate? So I mean, that's, as a chiropractor, I need to understand the spinal cord at its deepest understanding, and then how that expresses into the body. It's like if I got somebody that they're unable to stand up or look upright, or they walk through a doorway or something and they fall forward because their posterior chain muscles turn off, well, like you have brainstem compression, dorsal columns, probably superior colliculi. It's like tectospinal, retictospinal tracts are going to be affected. So it's like, fuck, I need to know that. But if I don't, I'm very superficially having a conversation with the body.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And even like I love where you're going with that. With sounds like you've studied functional neurology. Yeah.
That's my jam.
This is the funk neuro world. So this is like woo for me. It's a hardcore world, and I'm very happy that you studied that. I can even bring it down like 10 levels more simplified though, and like the simple things that are completely left out of the curriculum. Why? Because they're not in the atlases. If you go open up a Netter textbook, there's maybe one page that describes one of the major fascial categories. It's like a 300-page book. And the superficial fascia, the fascia that's at the surface here that I can kind of like squiggle back and forth here, there's like maybe not even a single page about it. And yet that's the texture that we first encounter when we touch someone, And like we hear about, a tissue glide. Okay, tissue glide, and you can like scooch it out of the way to make your contact or whatever. And I don't know how much, but what is the tissue glide? What is the tissue that you're gliding? It's I don't know if anyone would be able to really answer that in a very intelligent way. you know, so even simple things that are just totally left out of the curriculum because they're not in the atlases, you know? And the anatomy portion of our education is basically taken from the medical school, you know, like we have our chiropractic stuff that is unique to chiropractic, of course, but the anatomy portion of it is just straight up taken from the medical programs, you know, which is that's a fine place to start, but there's so much stuff that is not described that's in a body that all you got to do is look. If you just look in there, you'll find there's so much stuff that's not covered in the curriculum. And you know, I'll say, oh, why do you teach anatomy? What's the point? Well, a lot of reasons, but maybe one reason is to show you the things that wasn't in the book. You know, that is in the body, that's not in the book. So anyway, yeah, I get a little passionate about that.
I love that. Because when people ask me like when I make an adjustment, I'm like, there's three levels. And this is just my own personal kind of conclusion I've came to. You have a superficial adjustment, which is at the joints, restores motion. You have a deeper tonal adjustment that happens at the disc. That's more of a structural load component of how the disc and the end plates are varying in their disbursement of compensation. And then you have the cord level adjustment, which is directed through the fascia, because the dentate ligament is a direct reflection intersegmentally, globally, regionally, globally into the body. So if the rib cage is distorted and twisted, well, there's intersegmental misalignment at the dural attachment on the cord, which is creating this regional distortion. Is that correct?
That sounds good to me. I would take that. Yeah, I would take that. Sure, why not? Yeah.
It feels that way as I'm putting my hands on somebody. It's like we go from global, regional to the spine, and then we fine tune the adjustment to add the least amount of input to create the most amount of correction.
That sounds like a good approach to me. Yeah. And here's a question for you, because I get people who I work very lightly and gently for the most part, you know, like I've learned how to be more confident with my deeper moves, but in general, I have too much MLS and BGI in my blood, you know, and so I like to be very gentle. And sometimes people give me the feedback, I feel like you didn't really do that much, but I feel better somehow. You know, and some people are cool with that, and some people are like, no, but you need to do the thing, and you didn't, you know. So how do you manage those types of questions? Because it sounds like you might get similar questions, maybe, or do you not?
Sometimes, I think it depends on the person because there's the tone of the system, the biotensegrity of the system, big BGI guy myself, incorporation of it's listening to the body. If I'm doing something to you, I am manipulating you. If I'm listening actively to your system, then the adjustment comes from within out. And that's not an outside in destructive force, it's more of a constructive force, in my opinion. So I would say in my practice and in my experience, I've come across the person and the needs of the person with the elements of tonality. So like fire, earth, wind, water. Our lighter frame people don't need big, heavy adjustments on their frame. Whereas someone that could be a little more emotional, you put them in side posture and they're all over the place. They're just this glass of water that has no container.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of got to get you into an appropriate position, give you a little earth, give you a little stability, create some foundation, contain the emotions and direct the energy back into the spine so it can get back to the brain. So there's connection that's established. Fiery people, put your hands on them and you immediately know like I need to get out of the system as fast as I can because the body starts to fight you and kind of like push you out if you spend too much time in it. But with the adjustment, I find I like to try to access and ask the system, you know, it's something that could be like I'm playing with supine, prone, and seated adjusting for cervicals right now. So when we're face down, flexor compartment neurologically is turned off, extensor compartment's on is what we're palpating. It's what we get taught in school. You go face down, I'm palpating neurologically the posterior chain and the compensation of the anterior and sagittal planes. Whenever you go face up, posterior chain turns off, flexor compartment's on. So great way to check atlas, right? So how do you check atlas for toggle? Well, you have them go face up and you push their heels up, heel tension. That's going to tell me dural tension on how the atlas is pulling posteriorly, laterally, if there's a superior rock at the occiput. So that gives me an understanding of the anterior plane of the body. I put you in side posture. Now we're talking about a sagittal plane. We're talking about spiral lines. We're talking about how the ribs are moving through inspiration and expiration, how the greater trochanter is tied into the conversation of the pelvis and the low back. Scoliosis. It's like scoliosis is a loss of range of motion, flexion, extension. We've started to laterally bend in compensation and add rotation. So when the spine is actually disengaged and moving, it's lost this motion forward. And so now it compensates to the side and rotates. Well, if I put you in side posture and adjust you in side posture, is scoliosis not a sagittal or lateral bending pattern? Yeah. So if I adjust you in a sagittal plane, I'm reducing the sagittal dysfunction, which a lot of my scoliosis patients, I'll adjust their cervicals in a side posture position. Or we go seated. That's a load bearing position. How do you spend most of your day? Seated or standing?
Yes.
Well, let's put you back in that position of dysfunction.
Yes.
And see how you neurologically are compensating and showing up.
Yes.
So let's put you into trauma and adjust you into ease.
Yeah. There's a story that comes to mind. The first chiropractor I ever met, his name is Steve Racine. He's in Orlando. Really great guy, talented chiropractor. And he told me the story one time of a guy who he was working on who really liked riding his motorcycle. And every time he got on his bike to ride, he would get some kind of pain. I forget where it even was, but it was uncomfortable to ride his motorcycle. And he was working on him, not getting much results, and like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden he was like, wait a second, go sit on your motorcycle. They went out into the parking lot. He got on his bike and he did his adjustments with him on his bike. And then boom, that was it. It took care of it and the pain, disappeared and never came back. It's just so cool. So anyway, what you said reminded me of that. It's like, yeah, we're living in a certain way, and that, I don't know, that matters, whatever. So, yeah.
It's so fascinating. It's like we live in a 3D world, right? XYZ plane. So we live in this 3D world based off 3D motion. Most of us forget about theta. Theta spins around the three axes. It's in rotation. The brain loves theta. So it loves rotation. It loves spirals, right? So when you spin your arms forward or backwards, whether it's small circles or big circles, you're feeding information proprioceptively back into the brain to give it understanding of space-time awareness. It's like, how does that feed into the brain? 1,080 degrees. You're a gyroscope. So the brain, your eyes and your ears, they perceive a horizon. Their job is to keep you on that horizon and keep you level. But the spine's job is to keep you in motion in a 3D manner. So like for me, like even in my movement, my training, I train forward and backwards. I train side to side. I train angular and oblique patterns. I train in rotation in both directions. I put my head in, my 6 cardinal planes of motion as I'm moving my body because I'm interpreting information in different planes of motion. That should teach neurologically my programming to perceive my environment with a greater understanding of detail.
Yeah, nice. That's why I like climbing so much. I'm a rock climber and I love it because it's so varied. It's so different. Like you could do like weird kind of, and it's just never the same. And I love that variation. I love that, you look this way and all of a sudden you got to do this. And yeah, I love that kind of stuff. The variety is the spice of life for sure.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Do you see anything in the lab that shows up that really just it reminds you how potent chiropractic can be? Just a singular adjustment, how it can change the tone of the system, perhaps the mechanism or the communication and function of the system.
You know what, this a really interesting question because the answer is kind of in a simple way, no. Because and where I do see the profundity of chiropractic and how much one adjustment really can change a lot, although sometimes it doesn't just take one, by the way, but sometimes it can, and in either case, where you do see that is in the living. we see it in our clients, we see it in our clients every day. But in the lab, not really. And the reason why is because the life forces has left.
Well,
One thing, maybe this I can say that has struck me about my work in the lab is that I'm struck by how important the life force is. Because when the life force isn't there, it's very, very, very different. And I know that that's an obvious, self-evident thing to say. But it's worth saying anyway, because it really, contrast creates clarity. Contrast creates clarity. And whenever you see a body with life and when you see a body without life, you're like, OMG. The life is so important and the life is so important. It's really that's the magic sauce. And so yeah, the power of chiropractic I see in our living clients. Yeah, and then I'm struck by the contrast. Oh, is this still good? Oh, yeah, I think it is. Okay. And I'm struck by the contrast when it's not there, and what I maybe like another thing that whatever, like to close the loop, I guess. I feel like the dissection work helps me kind of like get a better sense of how to work with the system so that whenever I go work with the system in the living, then I'm better informed. Yeah, something like that.
That,
Yeah, if that makes sense.
that would make sense because, like you said, contrast is clarity. So it's like having something that you can look at and look at it in a cadaver, and then look at it. You don't necessarily look at it, maybe able to feel it, because putting your hands on it on the cadaver teaches you the tone. It teaches you the striation pattern. It teaches you shape, like, and it gives you that visual.
Yes.
Arno talked a lot about that.
Yes.
It's like the visualization.
Yes.
Being able to touch it in your mind's eye.
Yes.
Feel it, see it, taste it, smell it, like become it, right? Become the hollow bone.
Yes.
Being able to tap into that and have that certainty, I feel that is the magic. Like that's the definitive thing that the chiropractor separates himself or herself from any other profession. It's like somebody asked the other day on social media, it's like, what's the difference between the chiropractic profession and any other profession? I was like, well, the philosophy.
It's pretty unique.
We're basically glorified osteopaths. And it's like, I say that as a mechanistic presentation, because osteopaths move bone for the correction of the spine to promote healing in the body, restore motion, same things that we do.
That would check off.
It's just they don't have the intentionality to remove interference from the system to allow it to be able to heal faster.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't talked to enough of them to really get a sense of their philosophy, but definitely the philosophy in chiropractic, at least the way we were taught in a place like Life University or like Sherman or like, these sort of like more philosophically based places, it seems like that is more central part of our identity or more central part of our education, the ADIO principle, right? It's like there's something there's an intelligent force that's coordinating and giving life, and I don't know if the PTs or the osteopaths get that. I don't know. I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying that I don't know, so, but I know that we definitely do, at least in places like Life University and Sherman and, Life West and these kinds of places, because there are other chiropractic schools that they would be very frustrated by listening to this conversation.
These guys don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. These quacks over here.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't know. It seems kind of straightforward to me, It's like, but whatever.
It really does. And the beauty is like chiropractic, expect miracles. When you get out of the way, the body heals.
There you go.
It's so simple. And in practice, it is as simple as that. And it's a lot of people have a lot of feelings about how chiropractic in practice should show up and what it should look like and how the patient management and patient care and all these things come together. And I would say that's the artistic expression of the chiropractor. right? How you manage your practice is
Mhm.
practice. It's like how you bring community and how you bring service to your patients and your practice members. That really is the artistic expression. The science is always going to be there. The depth of the scientist is based off the person and their understanding of seeking of truth. And then the philosophy, it is so profound, yet so simple. And the deeper you dive into it, the deeper it makes you get out of the way. And it's like, oh, like, yeah, like when you adjust a bone. So yeah, I love when people ask me, they're like, well, how do you know where to be? It's like, well, your system tells me. It's like it's like tuning a guitar, right? If you know your A, your E, your G, D, whatever, it's like when you hit the chord, you're off, you're on high or on low. After you play it and you tune it enough times and you've sat there and tuned and tuned and tuned and tuned and tuned, it takes 10,000 hours to become a master. So as you tune the guitar, you can start to play different tones and different chords based off what you want. It's like the underlying foundation is the basic anatomy and physiology, but then you get deeper into the tonality of the system, biotensegrity. Whenever I lay you face down, it's like that right hip actually raises higher. It's like whenever you go on your back, it hurts your shoulders, and now you have nerve compression. It's like, oh, like you have that numbness and tingling when you're laying on your back. Well, how often do you lay on your back? Well, only when I'm in bed. How's your pillows? Well, I have 3 of them and I stack them under my head every night. Could you show me where your head might be if you were to lay in your bed? Oh, it's like way up here.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like, and I bet you snore and you have sleep apnea and you probably have GERD and like all these other things. Yeah. You are a perfect candidate for chiropractic.
Yeah.
And it's just this basic understanding of how the system works. And I think that going through school, I didn't appreciate how much information we got poured into orthopedic testing, neurological testing. Those things show up in application the moment a person walks into the office. They're walking at you, and you're like, oh, Trendelenburg gait. I know that's glute med. We're gonna check that greater trochanter on that right side. Yeah. Well, yeah, that right glute's not turning on piriformis. You got sciatic pain shooting down. I bet you have nerve compression at L4 and L5. Right? Iliolumbar ligaments probably too tight, pulling it at an angle, putting compression, and then altering the communication function on that side. It's like you start to understand these things and you start seeing patterns and write them down. And then when a person gets on the table, you're like, I know exactly what I need to do to help you. It's not necessarily correct you or fix you, because it's never you doing the work, and that's the philosophy of chiropractic. It's like the vibrational tonality of the system is communication. And if it's in alignment, there's no interference or dysfunction, therefore it should optimally perform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing that I really love that is emphasized in our education is that we're actually not the ones that fix people. The people fix themselves actually. And I really think that it's the case. I really think that people fix themselves, and all we do is just sort of give nudges in the right direction, give nudges in some direction. Hopefully it's the right direction, and sometimes, like I heard Arno talk about this, and I've definitely experienced it myself in practice, is sometimes just talking to people. Just people having someone to listen to, like I do, my first visits are very long. I do like an hour-long first visit, as many chiropractors do. And, and I listen, I ask them questions and I listen to what they say. And sometimes just that by itself is enough to help, And sometimes, yeah, like the realizations that people come up with on their own is enough, and sometimes like, one of the last podcasts I did, this story also came to mind. There was this little girl, I don't know, maybe she was I don't know, 7 or something. She was a very little girl. And she seemed kind of shy and timid, and she was like, and I did my work, I did my adjustment on her, and and we're all done. Hey, you know what? You're beautiful. Just I hope you're a beautiful little girl. You have a great day. And her face was like, whoa, like maybe she had never heard that from a man before or something. Maybe she doesn't believe that about herself, and just that I feel like I don't know what happened to her. I but I have a feeling that that helped, and that had nothing to do with any kind of physical work, but that's an adjustment into the nervous system, right? That's an adjustment into the nervous system is people feeling like better about themselves, I don't know. And I just think that's cool. And that's not unique to our profession. I mean, any sort of well-meaning health professional should have that kind of stuff in their tool belt, So, but at least from a body worker perspective, I'm glad that we have that sort of philosophical base, that we work on top of, that we're not the ones who fix people. People fix themselves and we just sort of come on, you can do it,
Yeah, it's directional, right? It's just you're giving direction to people.
Yes,
And it's maybe
exactly.
direction to the spine, direction to the body.
Exactly.
And it's like, hey, like I'm not judging you. I'm simply offering permission. It's like the body knows how to heal.
Exactly.
And your beliefs,
Exactly.
a lot of times, and this is like a big part of my practice, I say the three things that pull the spine out of alignment are physical, chemical, and emotional trauma.
Mm,
So stress is the currency of life. And how we show up in the world is how we've adapted to that stress. So physically, from the time you were born to everything that's happened to you to the current moment, your body's holding on to that. Whether it's integrated or not, it's still there as information. Chemically, everything we put on or in our body, that's going to change our chemistry. That's going to adapt us to our environment. And then emotionally, this is going to be our chemical conversations in our brain. How do I view myself? What do I think about? How do I think? Do I judge? Am I hypercritical? Am I doubting? Am I abundant? Like, do I love myself? But those are conversations that have depth and they have perhaps a little more philosophical approach because the body is going to change based off of our thoughts. Our neurochemical conversations change our biochemical conversations. Depression is a very physiological, I'm just depressed. Eeyore, right? Like when you think about depression, you think about Eeyore.
yes.
And so that's how the body physically expresses itself.
Yes.
And if I change the neurochemical conversation in my brain, my biochemical conversation changes in my body.
Yes.
And when I get adjusted, I'm integrating and moving the emotions, energy and motion, through the body, and then helping integrate whatever's not being integrated and adapting. And that's typically the conversation I have with my patients.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
I feel like it's a trifecta. It really kind of covers the bases, three T's.
It's good.
It dives a little deeper. I
Yeah.
can have the neurochemical conversation as a fuck neuro guy.
But as a meta categories, I think the three T's are good, thought, trauma, toxin. How did you say it? Oh, you used three different words, but they're meaning the same thing. What were the ones you used?
Physical, chemical, and emotional.
There you go. Physical, chemical, and emotional. Thank you. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Yeah, those are good meta categories, I think. Yeah, and also they are not mutually exclusive. They all affect each other. They're all intertwined. So yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's chiropractic. I get you, and it's such a beautiful profession because the practitioner, like, it's practice, right? Practice is practice for a reason. It's called practice for a reason. So it's
Perfect word.
It's a practice.
It's a perfect word.
And the practitioner can only take the patient to the level of healing or to the depth that they themselves have gone or walked. So it's like being able to handle a very traumatic emotional experience or something, a death in the family. If you yourself have never experienced a death in the family, you may be non-empathetic or sympathetic. So you may not be able to meet your patient at that level. So there's always personal development. And I think that's one of the greatest things as a chiropractor is I get to keep working on myself. And the more I work on myself, the more I get to show up for my patients.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. A lot of the issues that I've gone through in my life have all as uncomfortable as they have been to go through, they have been helpful for me to relay that sort of experience with my clients and meet them where they're at and yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, now I just gotta work on the going through a pregnancy with my partner and having that, and because I haven't had that experience yet, and so that'll be cool to like really be on that end of things, and because I work with tons of pregnant ladies and tons of babies and kids in practice, and I love doing so. I feel like I've gotten pretty good at it too, but it's going to be different whenever we go through it, right? So yeah, so I look forward to that.
What a beautiful journey.
Yeah.
Like, I look forward to it as well. This is like, I don't take care of a lot of kids. I probably have like 4 or 5 kids in practice now. And I look forward to my own experience of having like creating a family, and then that's gonna motivate me to dive into like how does a kid get better and how does a mom get better, and what like if this happens, what do we need to do? And that's exciting because it's just a whole nother realm that you're going to move through, that it's gonna attract people that are the same energy, they're going through it as well. And then that's gonna bring them into your life and your practice, and you're gonna help them through your own journey too.
Yes.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's going back to the anatomy. That's one thing that I would love particularly people who work with pregnant women. I would love to get people to feel it in their hands what the uterine ligaments are like, how the ovaries sit, and how those ligamental relationships are, how those fascial connections feel texturally, because you can learn it. I learned about it in a PowerPoint from school. What a ridiculous, I shouldn't say ridiculous, it's a fair place to start, but for that to be the place that you end also in the education is so weak sauce to me. Like, nah, it's a textural thing, and we're hands-on practitioners. You got to get it in your hands. How do you expect to know what a round ligament is if you never touched a round ligament? Oh, well, I can feel it. Well, how do you know that that's what you're feeling? How do you know that you're not feeling a different layer? You don't know. Oh, I do know though. No, maybe you do, but probably you don't. So it's like these kinds of things. Oh, what's the point of doing these anatomy courses? Well, oh, that's one reason. That's just one. There's a lot more I can sound off. And so yeah, I'm very passionate about being able to bring people through these kinds of experiences. And I hope more chiropractors can get sort of like open to the idea of learning more about the human body, because I think a lot of them in general, a lot of, not all of them, but in general, I think a lot of them are like, I did enough anatomy. Why are you wanting to do, like, I did it already. It's like, oh, this is a hubristic mentality, like how about we be humble and how about we realize that there's a lot that we didn't, catch in school. And even for the old school chiropractors who did get the cadaver experience, or maybe like yourself who had experience in undergrad, I'll tell you that I've worked with like 45 different bodies at this point, and I learned something new from every single one of them. Every single one, because we're all so different, we're all so different. And everyone has different things to show. And sometimes you make a cut one way that destroys one structure in order to reveal another one. Well, how about you do it in reverse order? How about you destroy the other one in order to reveal the one that you destroyed before? And so you got to do it both ways. But it turns out that there's not just 2 ways. It turns out there's like 1,000 different ways, and so going through all of it, there's so much to it. There's so much to learn. So yeah.
I love that you went there with it, because that ties into tone. So like if you think my first technique I ever learned in chiropractic school was TRT, torque release.
Love torque release.
Oh, torque it's the conversation in the body. So it's like, is it a right rotation? Is it a left rotation? Does the tissue want to go to the right? Does it want to go to the left? No, it wants to slide up and then go together. It's like, or no, it wants to pull down and go apart. That's a depth of understanding that as you dive deeper through the tissue, there's 6 layers of muscle and tissue on the back. So it's like before you even get into like the ligaments or anything, it's like just muscles, there's 6 layers. That's correct.
It depends how you count them.
Okay. See,
it depends how you count them.
I love that, because like I remember in school, I was like 6 layers, and then that was one way we learned it.
Yes, 6 is the classic number of spinal muscles you're talking about.
Correct.
Of posterior. Yeah. That's the typical number is 6, but it very much depends on how you count. It depends how you cut. You cut one way, you can make one layer into 2 layers. You can take 3 layers and cut them all in way as 1 layer. So it depends. It's not so straightforward.
That's amazing because like having that understanding, right? That's going to allow you to have much more specificity.
Yes, I think so.
Because it's like it's fine tuning your adjustment.
Mhm.
The setup's everything. If you get a great setup, then you don't even have to really thrust hard. You don't have to do much.
That's right.
It's patience all the time. I get on setup and I start to go for the adjustment. And it's like boom, and it clears. I'm like, well, it stole it from me, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, that was a great setup. They're like, it went before you moved, before you did it. And I'm like, yeah, let's make sure that the whole joint's clear. So now we know that there's maximal communication there. It's like, and so it's so fascinating that you can just have this conversation with the tissue and get fluidic with it. And there's so many layers to it. You got your hand on somebody's sacrum and you're talking to C3 on the left side of the anterior side of the neck. And it's like, okay, well, there's a direct connection here. Like, where's my best point of entry? Like, well, it's not for me to decide. It's more for the system just to tell me where I need to be. It's like, as you listen deeper, then, well, actually, there's a T7 on the left side that's got a rib attached to it. It's like, we're going to clear that. That cleared a lot of this pattern. Now we know there's a first rib at C7. Like, that's actually what's causing the SI joint to be out of alignment.
Yeah, that's cool. I like it. Yeah, I like it. We should work on each other sometime.
I would love that.
Yeah, I'd love that too. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
So I got a question. Disease.
Okay.
Having worked with cadavers, you see a lot of disease.
Yes.
You see a lot of just adaptation that you would never assume would be present.
Yes.
Based off of externally looking at the body. And you look at somebody, your liver's 3 times the size it's supposed to be.
Yes.
So in that, with the philosophical understanding that the living matter is going to be animated and be working to correct itself or to adapt based off its environments, when disease is present in the body, is there anything that distinctly stands out that you can identify perhaps how it occurred, or is there a direct connection associated with something that's happening that you could probably do some investigation and reverse engineer?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question. I don't know. I don't know if I can nail down causation. That's hard to me. I have a couple stories. I have a couple ideas of a couple different sort of things that I see patterns of regularly, as far as disease processes go. I have some kind of theories and stories, if you will, but I don't know. That part's hard. What's easier is to say this is what it is now. That part's easier, and so what it is now when a certain organ is diseased, sometimes it's extremely clear. It's extremely obvious. Like the first example that comes to mind is vasculature that has become crunchy. Very common, unfortunately. You want arteries to be pliable and soft, but so I think very often I'll get an artery and it's crunch, crunch, crunch. It's hard. It's calcification, and that's a process. And so it's that's rough. But and you could see that and you could say, oh, look, this is a diseased artery. It's atherosclerotic diseased artery. You could say that. But to me, one way I kind of prefer to think about it is that's actually an adaptation to try to keep you on this planet longer. Because you imagine if you have the arterial walls that are getting chemically irritated for whatever reason, causation is tough, but for whatever reason, you have an irritation of those arterial walls. And so the brilliant innate intelligence will go, oh, we have some damage happening to these walls. We need to lay down some reinforcements. So what can the body do? The body lays down reinforcements and makes that thing more strong, So it's actually a smart adaptation instead of a disease process. That's one thing that I'd kind of like to share with everybody is that, that's, there's different ways you could think about it, right?
Mhm.
And this, another one is the so-called degenerative disc diseases. Like, I'll never forget, Wade Port, God bless his soul. He's still alive. I don't know why I said it that way.
We love you, Wade.
Yeah, we love you, Wade. I'll never forget in his office one time, he has this little model of three, like stage one, stage two, stage three, so-called degeneration. And he was explaining to me, he was like, but degeneration is not the right word, because it's actually a compensation, it's an adaptation to try to stabilize things. He says it's not a degenerative, it's stabilizing, that's innate's response to instability is to create more stability. Let's lay down more bone, let's like make the system more robust. The problem is that it can go too far, right? It's the same with the atherosclerotic arteries. I'm not saying we should, it's good. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying that it's a smart adaptation to some other process. And what we see at the gross level is the adaptation to it, not the disease of it. So I don't know. All of those concepts are not infinitely true, right? It can go too far, like I said, but it's maybe a good thing to think about a little bit, a different way of perceiving this so-called disease.
Well, I love it because that that is the underlying principle of um, holistic health,
Mm,
right? It's a state of adaptation. You're adapting to your environment and the stimulation of that environment.
mm,
So internal environment is going to adapt to what you put into it. It's a terrarium. And what you put into the terrarium is going to run the system, the factory, the things that are inside of it. If it's deficient in minerals, deficient in vitamins, it's deficient in living necessary nutrients, well, it has to adapt. It has to take those from other places or create something else to alter the conversation to make sure that adaptation is continuing. Because disease is really just dysfunction in the body long term that results in poor function.
mm,
Like poor function over time is going to create dis-ease and disease in the body.
mm,
So if it's disconnected, it's not communicating, it's not functioning properly, it's deficient in its nutrients and resources. Yeah, look at a business. If your employees never come in, how are you ever supposed to have a successfully ran business? That's your organs,
mm,
right? That's your
Mm.
body.
mm,
If it's deficient, it won't function appropriately.
mm,
Therefore, you have dysfunction, disease, and everything else.
mm.
At least that's my take on it.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
And then you
I
have stuff
like
that gets
it.
way out of control too. So it's like cancer and such. Like that's where I think that's an extreme state of adaptation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and an inability to have appropriate amount of death,
Mm.
right? It's an inability because we have to have some amount of death in our body because otherwise the things stagnate, right? You've got to have turnover. We got to have newness also. And for newness to happen, you have to have death. And so whenever there's not an appropriate level of death, then that's the definition of cancer. So yeah, it's interesting, huh?
That's really potent because I have a buddy that actually is going through some issues right now, health-wise, chiropractor, that, I pray for him daily, like really, he's battling. And he's got 2 ureter tubes, kidneys don't work anymore, stage 4 bladder cancer.
Oh, no.
All the things, his rectum has calcified, no longer is usable.
Oh,
So
no.
the lumen's closed and it's
Does he have a colostomy
he
bag?
does have a colostomy bag.
Yeah.
And it's pretty serious. And I got to work on him when I went to fall CE.
Mm,
And a lot of BGI.
yes.
And it was like as soon as I just combed his system, everything from bottom of the rib cage down was black. Just electrically, like energetically disconnected. So just bring light into the system.
Yeah.
Bring it back online, get it connected back to the body, back to the brain, and just spending that intimate time of just letting his body turn on and recognize itself.
Yes.
And he did really well for a couple of weeks, and recently he went to the medical doctor and they gave him a really shitty diagnosis, and it plummeted him again because his beliefs changed. And it's so fascinating that you hear stories of people that have terminal disease and they go to a seminar with like Joe Dispenza, or they go sit with ayahuasca, or they go do some type of ceremony, or they get some experience that's an internal experience that it causes their beliefs to change, and then it rapidly changes their physiology in response. It's undeniable, it's science. I mean, it is science. We can call it woo as much as we want, but it is quantifiably valid. And who am I to discredit the intelligence of the body? Let me just get out of the way. Let me adjust the spine, make sure there's no interference, let you heal, baby.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. Oh, it seems pretty apparent that the emotional world is connected to the physical body. It's like, I don't know how anyone can deny that. I don't know how anyone can deny that at this point, you know? It's so plain to me. I've had experiences in my own life, that forcefully demonstrate to me how connected my emotional world is to my physical body. It's totally undeniable, and I've seen it in clients and just over and over and over. It seems pretty plain, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to look at, I forget the guy's name, he's a Harvard professor, or he was at Harvard, maybe Stanford, I think it's Harvard, but he'd come up with a consciousness chart. And it was the layers of consciousness. So from shame at a 20 energetically, been
I know
measured
what you're talking about.
all the way up to enlightenment.
Power versus Force. He wrote that book.
Yes, same guy.
Oh, what's his name? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, anyway, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
That guy.
And so understanding it's like, and like there's a quantifiable number attached to an emotional state. So that's a state of consciousness. Then you have an emotional intrinsic belief that's associated with that level of consciousness. Then you have an individualistic, egoic opinion, and then you have a God level of consciousness opinion, and then you have a process that allows you to go to the next level. So it's like from shame, we go all the way across, and there needs to be a certain process, maybe of elimination. And elimination allows you to go to, gall. And then you go across the board and you have to understand, it's like, if I'm going to be in a state of shame, I am going to feel emotionally humiliated. It's like, and then I'm going to be very, very negative with the way I view myself. And then my consciousness, my God level of my interpretation, my state of observation, some people say, is that, you're viewing the world as a victim. And so because you're a victim of the world, you're very shameful. And then you're humiliated, and then you don't like yourself. And so to move through that, you have to eliminate it. And then how you eliminate it is go to the next level. And it's like this whole journey. And so you move through survival, authority, integrity, and then eventually into that spiritual enlightenment, joy, love state at the top, which is that 700 and above. And Joe Dispenza uses some of that work in some of his seminars and his conferences. He has the machines where he reads the room. He does a breath work or a visual meditation, and he reads the energy of the room before and after, and he can quantifiably prove that he changed the state of people.
Yeah.
And states are static, right? Like you said earlier, emotions are stored in the body. There's placement. Anger lives in the heart and the mind. Depression lives in the axial body. It's like, what is it? Depression, it lives things in the abdomen. A lot of things are gut, heart, and mind. And so when we're emotionally in these feelings, where does the emotion sit? Because it has a container, it has a place. And if it's sitting in that place, when we start to move it, it's no longer static. Emotions are energy in motion. If the motion has become static, it's density, and it's blocking the light body from performing.
Yeah, right on. I like it. Yeah, I like it. I love Joe Dispenza's work. I mean, he's like so over the top, but he's also so great. And I love that he's like taking all of these sort of like traditional principles that have existed for forever, and he's putting a little bit of research behind it, not a little bit, like a lot of research behind it, actually. To whatever extent our little silly little scientific tools can measure things, because I think there's a lot that our scientific tools simply can't measure. We're not refined enough yet. But even still, with our, caveman tools, I'll call them caveman tools. They're not caveman tools, but relative to, I think, what really exists, even with our little caveman tools, there's still huge differences, huge changes that you can observe very plainly and very clearly, all kinds of heart brain coherence stuff and all kinds of, I heard he's doing like microbiome research, like he'll take stool samples from the people who were at his seminars before or after these sessions, and the microbiome is completely different, much more healthy post. So what the hell? Like it's crazy. It's so God bless Joe Dispenza for doing all the hard work that he's doing, because I think that if people took him more seriously, they'd realize that it's not so woo-woo and purple as a lot of people kind of put it out to be. Yeah.
And coming into chiropractic school is hyper objective, like evidence based, right?
Uh-huh.
And then I got in there, and there's some subjectivity, the artistic expression, the practitioner, how they show up. Because not every, like, you could have 10 chiropractors line up, and everybody's going to adjust differently.
Definitely.
And that for me was like, okay, I have to be really great at how I perform. And then going through school, you see a lot of people that weren't putting in time and effort in their adjustment, their training, their intentionality, their state of intention and dropping in before they put their hands on someone. And I can tell you indefinitely that I can distinguish between a chiropractor that has the intention of love and healing in their hands versus someone that does not.
Yeah. 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 It was very intense to see our classmates, how the variety of how much effort gets put in by our classmates. It was intense to watch. Because some people are just like, oh, it's like chiropractic is like a good profession. I can make good money and like it's gonna be a good life. And some people are like, no, I get to like be a healer and I get to like help people. Those are so different. Those are so different. In the former, those people tend to just like they go to the classes, they do the bare minimum, they get the passing grades, and they go party on the weekend. And it's like I don't want that person to work on me or my family. And you get other people who are just like, forget the partying. I need to like go to seminars on the weekend. I need to like work. I need to learn. I need to invest my whole soul into this so that I can be a good at what I do. And yeah, and it's like it's totally a thing whenever I hear people out in the general public, oh, chiropractic, I don't believe in chiropractic, or it didn't work for me or whatever. And it's like, dude, probably half of my fellow chiropractors, I wouldn't let them touch me. It's unfortunate, but I kind of feel that way a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like it's too much because I saw it in my classmates and I see it in the professionals out there. It's like there's so many of them who just don't. Yeah, they're just like that. So
But I think there's room for evolution because I mean, like, look at the things that you're doing, right? Because like for me, I want to give back. My big thing is giving back to the profession, taking young docs under my tutelage as I become more successful and grow in practice. And as I expand, I'm ready to bring on more doctors. It's like I want to create an army of well adjusting, well educated, like spiritually tapped in philosophical chiropractors that are there to serve people. Right? It's like we all serve ourselves, but that's an in-house job, right? That's our team. We're going to build on each other. We're going to do the work for each other, for ourselves, and that's going to compound and show up in our practice. So taking the healers, right? The people that are diving in, that are going obsessively into it, and they're willing to sacrifice themselves short term for the long term gain. I would much rather work with somebody like that versus someone that just wants to come in. They're book smart and they go through school and they do really well academically. Then they put their hands on you and they have zero confidence conviction.
there's a lot of layers to being good at what we do, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, there's a lot to it. And another one is that, like, maybe you have someone who worked super hard in school, they put their heart and soul into everything, and they have amazing hands, they're great adjusters, and they're so introverted and have no business sense, and no one knows who they are. That's another thing that we gotta be good at,
Yes.
It's like I didn't really take that seriously enough when I was in school. I was like, once I got out, I'm like, OMG, I actually gotta get people in the door first before they lay on my table.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
So,
I'm coming on 2 years going in my own practice. And I came out of school was like, oh, I got a space, I got a table, I can adjust people. And then you're like sitting there and then a week goes by and you haven't seen a single patient.
yeah,
And you're like, oh no,
yeah,
I don't know what I'm doing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then it's like you start the process of like going, it's like dating. It's so funny. If you go out, it's like you don't give her your number. You get her number. Same thing with going out with like as a business. I don't want to give you my contact info. I want to get your contact info so I can follow up. So I know that there will be a follow-up.
Yeah, because otherwise there might not be a follow-up.
Precisely.
Yeah,
Most of
yeah,
the time,
yeah,
when you give your
totally.
number to somebody, they're probably, they don't immediately to follow up with you, they ain't going to.
Yeah, that's happened to me too many times.
So many times.
That's okay though.
Yeah, it's like, there's so much you don't know, and
Yeah.
and there's confidence. It's like I feel like coming out of school, I needed my first year to validate that I could do it. Like my first year, I'll be open and honest and transparent about it. It's like all my patients that I saw, I loved every single one of them, and I wanted healing and health and all the things, but I didn't have the business model. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the conviction. Clinically, I felt that I wasn't good enough. My adjustments, were great, but it was the follow through, the follow up, the emails. It's the creating an educational process for the patient to understand what and why they're there. Because after your 10th adjustment, they're like, hey, I feel great. I don't need you anymore. Like, I didn't teach you. I failed you. Like I failed you. Because if you understood the profound like effects of chiropractic, you wouldn't be saying I'm fixed. You'd be saying, let's keep going. It's working. I'm healing. I'm growing. I'm getting better. I want more.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's just because you got a little bit of success and now you're filling yourself with instant gratitude because the short-term thing's gone. Well, what about the long-term thing? But that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I didn't do a great job at communicating that.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I'm still kind of figuring out how to do that because I feel this tension between like letting people be the adults that they are. Like you're a big boy, you're a big girl, you make your own decisions in your life. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And, like an educational piece or like a motivational piece, like, hey, just because your neck pain went away doesn't mean that you necessarily need to be done, like, like, we both like exercising. Oh, I got my PR on my bench or whatever, now I'm done.
Right.
No.
For the rest of my life,
For the rest of my life, I'm done.
No more benching ever.
Yeah, I'm done benching. It's like, no, you keep going because there's more, you can like, I don't know. I love body work so much. I get massages and adjustments regularly for the rest of my life, and I've lived with a little bit of pain in my life, a little bit for a short amount of time. Now I have none. I haven't had any for a long time, but I still love getting adjusted because it feels good, and also, like performance enhancement and all these kinds of things like proprioceptive refinement and, so you just keep going and going and going, right? So anyway, I feel this tension between, letting people be the autonomous adults that they should be, and sort of like pushing them. So I don't know, there's some kind of in between, there's some kind of balance between that. And I'm still figuring that out too. Like, because I don't want to be like, you must sign up. You must. Like, no, you don't. need to. Need is too strong of a word, you know, but like, would it be good for you? Probably it would be good for you. So I don't know. Maybe that's how I explain it, but I'm working on it.
That's okay.
Along with you, I'm working on it.
Yeah, and it's I told one of my friends today, I was like, I needed my first 2 years of practice for the personal development, right? It was like the personal development allowed me to allow myself to become the doctor and not have a personal agenda, right? It's a professional agenda. Like, I'm here to be your doctor.
Mm.
I'm a chiropractor. I'm gonna adjust your spine, X-rays. We're gonna do the thing as clear as day. It's like going to the dentist, and like, you don't go to the dentist and be like, hey, I'm only gonna pay $40 today.
They would laugh at you.
I wish.
They would laugh at you.
But patients will walk in and be like, no, I'm only gonna see you every other week.
Yes.
So hey, can I be the doctor right now?
Right? Yeah, I mean,
It's
yeah.
like and this is like something I've had to learn. It's like, I'm the professional, and
Yeah.
economically, we can have a conversation about economics, but it's not a conversation that we're gonna have right now, because your health is what we're gonna talk about, and that's what's most important. And so for me, when I present care, I am presenting it, and it's just a presentation. I'm not attacking you. I'm not telling you you're gonna die if you don't get adjusted. I'm not gonna tell you you're gonna get cancer. I'm not gonna scare carry you. I may present it in a way that forward head posture is creating the snoring, it's cutting off your oxygen, it's creating pressure on your important nerves that are going to very vital organs that give you life. These are important things we need to correct immediately. Urgency, because it is urgent. The sooner we can get that decompression off those nerves, the sooner we can get more function back to those organs. So we're gonna start there. And then we're gonna move forward, and the educational process starts there.
Yeah.
And that's been my journey, even for myself. It's like getting adjusted every other week, once a week. Now I want to be twice a week, and I'm putting more stress on my body than I can maintain. And so now I need more care. I need more massages, more adjustments. I need more breath work, less compressive exercise, more unwinding, more yoga, more bar, more Pilates, more running, spending more time in nature, doing cold plunges, doing things to de-stress my body, not stress it out more.
Good nutrition, sunlight, all of the above, right? Yeah.
And that's a personal journey. It's like, when I first started, I was like, here's exercise, here's lifestyle, here's nutrition, here's blood work, here's all these things. And then nobody did it. And I got mad. And it's like, I've slowly pulled more and more off.
Yeah.
So I use kind of an SOT model for my care. If it's a class 1, we're gonna do some cranial work. We're gonna make sure the autonomic nervous system's function. Category 2, we have neuromuscular compensation. Category 3, we have an antalgic lean. That means that there's direct nerve compression, and you can no longer actively move into a proper range of motion without some compensation being present. We have to correct that immediately. Get you into category 2. Then, as we're working category 1 and 2, your nervous system, as it communicates to the body, starts to function better. We reduce symptomology, we reduce pain, we reduce the things that are afflicting or affecting us, creating more function, more potential for life, more quality for life.
Hallelujah. I like it. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. I like it.
Outstanding. So last question.
Okay.
If there's one thing that you wanted the viewers to know, one thing, chiropractic patients, future patients, anyone, right? What's the one thing that in your experience that's just definitive in your life that you could share that would really land the plane and send us home?
That is such a huge, ridiculous question.
It's so vague.
Very vague. But let me see what comes to mind. Trust and confidence. Maybe trust and confidence in oneself. Trust and confidence in the organizing principles of the universe. Like you go look up at the stars and the planets and stuff, and they're all moving in a very organized way, you know? The seasons are very organized. Our bodies within our own bodies, so many trillions of different things going on simultaneously, all coordinated, you know, and whatever one's spiritual beliefs may be, you know, I believe there's like a divine hand sort of not making things happen, but I don't know. There's some involvement and some sort of intelligence, you know, that we're not able to perceive with our eyeballs.
Mm.
And so to have confidence in that is better than to have a fear that it's all going to fall apart or that it's all for naught or it's all screwed or it's like, yeah, maybe sometimes it might feel that way. But you just hold your horses, baby girl, you know, it's gonna be okay. The apoptosis is an important part of the thing. We were talking about cancer earlier. It's like for the cells to die is so important because otherwise that's cancer. So, you know, so yeah, so that is uncomfortable. The death is uncomfortable, but it's important, you know, it's important. So the death that I'm using as a metaphor, the death I'm using as an analogy for the uncomfortable things in our life, you know, and the uncomfortable processes that happen in our experience. So, but you know, you just have faith, big girl. It's gonna be okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's what I would say. Have trust in it. Have faith in it.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. You can't have life without death, just like you can't have light without darkness and darkness without light.
Contrast, baby.
Contrast is clarity.
Yeah, yeah.
Madhav, it's been a pleasure.
This has been a great pleasure to chat with you, Brent.
Absolutely. Looking forward to another one.
I hope so.
And then potentially a future event down in the Springs.
Yeah.
Tell us a little if there's any events coming up, how we can find you, how we can connect to you. And then if anybody has any questions directly for you, we can point them to your social media or whatever is the best way to connect to you.
Totally. Yeah. So the next course in the lab that I'm running completely on my own is June, I believe 17 through 23. It's a Monday through Saturday. I might have those dates mixed up with the previous year, but I think that's 23 through 28, something like that. It's a Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday in June. We can double check those dates and have it written down somewhere. But yeah, that's the next course that I'm doing on my own in the lab. If anyone is interested in that, if anyone would like to get any body work from me, you know, I have a website where you can sign up to make your own appointment on my website. It's pretty straightforward and easy to kind of walk yourself through that. And yeah, and I'll give you my Instagram handle and Facebook handle and all that stuff. Maybe we can write that in a description somewhere. And yeah, that would be it. And to sign up for the in-person lab course will also be on my website. I have an education tab on my website and then like a chiropractic tab on my website. So it's all done through there.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Boom.